This is Austin Aries, this is Manic Expression, and this is one great video.
Hey, it's me, WWE, and today I'm continuing my retrospective review with Diddy Kong Racing for the Nintendo 64, a game that I got for Christmas as a kid, a game that I loved back then, but does this game hold up pretty well? Let's find out. You know, one of my goals when doing these backstories is not only to inform you, the audience, about its history, but to also, for myself, to learn something new about my favorite game. And according to Unseen64.net, which, for the record, I do most of my research on this stuff, Diddy Kong Racing was originally going to be a real-time strategy game. Now, I couldn't find any footage or any updates on it, mostly because it was quickly changed into a racing game, which originally was going to call Wild Cartoon Kingdom, which is pretty much a bunch of animal characters racing. Then it was later changed into RC Pro M 64. RC Pro M is a franchise created by Rare for the NES. This is back when Rare officially became a part of Nintendo. This was changed to Diddy Kong Racing due to Shigeru Miyamoto advising Rare to do so, mainly because Diddy Kong is a recognizable character to the gaming audience and become more marketable that way. At first, Rare wasn't happy with the decision, but they later on agreed if it means that they get stronger support from Nintendo themselves. Now, this wouldn't be the last time Shigeru Miyamoto has changed something of Rare's, and in later retrospective episodes, you'll find out. As for Beta, you can find some unused items from RC Pro M as well as unused tracks, but that's pretty much it. Now on to the actual game. Now, there is a story to this game, even though you probably wouldn't figure this out just by playing the game alone. But according to the instruction manual, a giant alien pig named Riz Pig has taken over the island that belongs to Timber the Tiger, one of the playable characters in this game. And Timber asks Diddy and his friends to help get the island back. And to do this, you must defeat 4 bosses to get the Riz Pig amulet. And pretty much we'll go on for there. I don't want to spoil too much, but there is going to be potential spoiler in this game. Now, when you start off, you get into this hub world, and there's golden balloons scattered around, 4 of them to be exact. They're easy to get. I recommend getting the airplane. Get used to all the vehicles because each of them has minor differences. The cart, is pretty self-explanatory. It's a strike forward, left, right. The airplane, the one difference that is that you can ascend and descend. You press down to go up and vice versa. And the hovercraft get some minor use to. It's mainly the turning. All I can recommend is that don't turn too sharply. But other than that, controls work pretty fine. There are 5 zones with 4 tracks each. This one is called Dino Domain, which is dinosaur theme, obviously. This is a good way for beginners to get used to the controls and what's to prepare in the other tracks. Now, I feel like they didn't take the dinosaur gimmick to its full advantage. Honestly, if you take all the dinosaur out, there's just be regular stages and I wouldn't even know any big difference. Now, some of these are cart only, where others have hovercraft and airplane. In the time trial, you can switch vehicles wherever you want, which makes pretty interesting multi-player matches. Like, one person can have a hovercraft while the other one has an airplane. But I'm getting too ahead of myself. Dino Domain is mostly forgettable, with the exception of the volcano level. I think that is the best one. Now, obviously, this is inspired by Mario Kart, and they pretty much took that formula and added a little spin to it. Like in weapons, in Mario Kart, the items are chosen at random, while in Diddy Kong Racing, you can actually control them by getting certain colored balloons, like the red one for missiles and the blue one for boost, and you can upgrade it up to 3 times by getting the same color balloon, but get a different color and you use that upgrade. Now, after getting first place in the off-road track, you go to the boss battle, or boss race really. Pretty much this is a nice change of pace. Now granted, it's not really much different than a normal race, except that you have to avoid obstacles and the boss itself, and this one in particular, he can squish you. But it's, a nice little spin to what's supposed to be a typical racing game. It really makes you feel like you're on an actual adventure. Now, you must defeat the boss twice, once after completing the first 4 stages, and again after completing the Silver Coin Challenge, which I get to a little bit later on. I probably won't go too much in each boss races because for the most part they're all the same with some small twists, but I just want you to know that this is probably one of my favorite part of the game. The Silver Coin Challenge is pretty much going to the same track and collecting 8 silver coins that are scattered all over the place. Now, most gamers will probably know that there's going to be some cases where the silver coin is going to be in crazy locations, pretty much causing you to slow down or, make you lose the lead. You need to collect all these 8 silver coins and must get first place to get another golden balloon. This is actually pretty fun and can actually be pretty challenging at times. My only complaint is that once you get farther to the game, it feels more like padding to me than actually experiencing something new. But then again, I play this game in one sitting just so I can get this review out as quickly as possible. So if you decide to give this game a rest or two, the Silver Coin Challenge will probably feel more refreshing. The one thing I really like about the Silver Coin Challenge is that the hitbox of the silver coins are very generous. I swear most of the time I feel like I missed a coin, but it still registered that I got it. Area 2 is Snowflake Mountain, which, well, a little spoiler about myself, I really like the ice stages in almost any game, and in Little Retrospective, you're going to find more why I like the ice stages, but let's stick with Diddy Kong Racing here for a moment. I really like the design that Railroad does and how creative they got, like with the icy loop-de-loop and the giant snowballs with eyes on it. I know that's, well, not the most creative thing ever, but I still like that design for some reason. But pretty much Snowflake Mountain has some of my favorite tracks, especially Snowball Valley, which has 2 pathways you can pick from. Now, neither of which gives you a greater advantage, but it's a nice little touch to what could have been a mediocre level. If Diddy Kong Racing ever gets a sequel, I would like to see that remade in HD. Now, the second boss race is this giant walrus, which is pretty much the same as the first boss race with the giant triceratops. The only thing different is you use a hovercraft instead of a go-kart. Now, why use the hovercraft instead of the go-kart? Well, my guess is that they want to keep things balanced with all the boss races. Pretty much the 6 boss races, and you use each vehicle 2 times. This is including the boss race with Wrist Pig. Other than that, it's pretty much the same race with the Triceratops, only that this one's a bit harder, at least for me, mainly because the warriors travel much faster and I'm not really that good with the hovercraft. The only strategy I would recommend is use the missiles instead of the boosters, especially get, level 3 power missiles, so you can just blast that walrus, right to smithereens. World 3 is Sherbet Island. Despite its name, unfortunately it's not an ice cream level, but instead it's a pirate theme level. Well, mostly just water everywhere with some pirate stuff sprinkled around here and there. But all I can say is that the silver coin challenge in this one is probably the most annoying in this area. It's like, man, they put those coins in awkward places, and especially using the hovercraft, which I despise the most, it can make this part very annoying. But despite that little problem, I still enjoy each of the tracks because it has creative alternate paths, and especially the key, one I didn't mention before, but there's also 4 keys, one in each zone, and pretty much you gotta find that key in very creative hidden places. Now, good thing you don't have to get first place to keep the key. You can just get the key and leave the track, and pretty much the key is yours. This is important to get to the other area, which I will mention a little bit later on. Next is the race with the octopus. Now, this is different for 2 reasons. One is that instead of going from start to finish, you pretty much having to do that race with this giant octopus, which, now that I think about it, pretty much the rest of the boss races are 3 laps instead of just going from a start to finish line. I'm not sure if Rare intended this all this time, or they changed their mind in mid-production, but all I can say is it's kind of a strange change, but not a big deal change. It still works pretty well and it's fun overall. And the second change is that this enemy drops pretty much bubbles that stops you in the track. But other than that, it's actually a pretty easy boss race. Zone 4 is Dragon Forest. I want to say it's based on the medieval times, but they didn't go full on out with it. It's definitely one of the most diverse tracks out there. Like, one of them is based on the woods, the other one's on the canyon and village, etc. Usually most zones stick with a common theme, but this one got way more creative and it really stands out more. As for the tracks themselves, they're pretty fun. I would definitely say they got really creative with the track designs, with the alternate pathways. But for the most part, I won't say they're the best one out there. Next we get the Dragon Boss, which is a flying mission. This is probably the second easiest race you can ever have. Pretty much it acts the same as the octopus, leaving fireballs in your path, which is very easy to dodge. All I can say is that the only thing you really have to worry about is not crashing into trees or stalagmites. But, other than that, pretty easy and kind of a bit anticlimactic, to be honest. After defeating the 4 boss, you're off to your first wrist pig race. Now, what's unique about this race is that there's no balloons to help you, just boost pads. I find that pretty creative and really tests your driving skills. I kind of wish the developers did a little bit more of this, but this is the only one that actually had this kind of stipulation. As for the actual race itself, it's actually pretty easy. All I had to do is memorize the track and make sure to hit every boost pads. So it's a bit of trial and error, but a pretty easy race overall. Now, after winning the first wrist pig race, you get the fake ending, which pretty much tells you that you got more to complete. Now, in order to get to the final wrist pig race, you need to complete future friend zones. That's including the silver coin challenge. You need to get all the wrist pig amulet, which you should already have before the first race. The TT amulet, which is collecting all 4 keys and completing these little mission objectives, and getting 4 trophies, which is pretty much like Mario Kart. You go to each zone and race all 4 tracks, and depending what place you get in each race, you get a certain number of points, and pretty much you gotta get the most points at the end of all the tracks. Now, keep in mind, I played this game mostly without non-stop. What I did is play one half of the game on one day and then the other half the next day, so that's really the only break I had. And by this point, I didn't collect the TT amulet or the trophy amulet, so not only I had another zone to complete with the Silver Coin Challenge, but more trophies and TT amulets to collect. And, well, the only advice I would say is take a break from this game every now and then so it won't feel tiring, because I think that may have summed my experience for the second half of the game. Now off to the final zone, Future Friend Zone, and I really like the future settings in this game. I think visually it looks great. It's probably the best looking part of the game. Well, for me, I like the ice level, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people will appreciate the future look of this game. I think the only minor complaint is that, well, except for one track that does have a bit of gravity, I feel like it doesn't take advantage of the future concept. To me, it feels like it was just a regular stage with a coat of paint on it. And not that the stages are bad, it's still pretty fun, but it felt kind of anticlimactic to what's supposed to be the final tracks before facing the final boss. Now, before I get to the final Red Pig race, I want to talk about the TT amulets. Now, in order to obtain these, you need to find a key that is hidden in all 4 zones. The first one's pretty easy to find, but the other 3, good luck finding them without a strategy guide. All I can say is that you really gotta think outside the track, or at least outside the box, really. I won't spoil anything. All I can say is that, well, I was gonna say it's gonna be fun to find, but it's way more of crazy, and you know how you're supposed to figure that out without a strategy guide. But you know, back to these I guess mini games that you need to complete. They vary from beating up your opponent to get rid of all the bananas, collecting a certain amount of bananas and bringing it back to your designated area, or the most annoying one is collecting the eggs. Now, getting the eggs is easy. All you have to do is, well, I guess drive over it and bring it back to your nest. But the real trick is that you need to keep it there in order to hatch, or it doesn't count. And it's hard to do when your opponent keep on stealing it from your nest, and you need to steal eggs from their nest to prevent them from winning. It's really more based on luck, at least from my experience. There's really no real strategy except for get an egg and steal somebody else's egg, and that's pretty much it. Now we're off to our final Red Pig race. Now, a few people said that this race is a lot easier than the first Red Pig race. I would have to disagree with that. I found this part very difficult. If you have an easier time, then good for you, but unfortunately, this is one of the parts that I could not beat as a kid. But now that I'm a more experienced gamer, I was able to beat it. Now, this race throws everything at you, moving obstacles, pretty much tight and sharp turns. There's no boost pad, you just only use balloons. And of course, those spaceships shooting at you doesn't make things easier. This is one race that really tests your skills, and I managed to overcome it. And that was Diddy Kong Racing. Now off to my final thoughts. Overall, Diddy Kong Racing is still a pretty great game, even when I first played it back in 1997. Now, granted, some of the stuff hasn't aged well, like the graphics, obviously. And playing this game all at once can be pretty tiring, so again, I recommend playing this game and taking short breaks like here and there. But everything else pretty much set up pretty fine. Gameplay and control are solid. There's actually quite a bit of replay value in this game. And of course, I like the additional stuff that Rare added to the Mario Kart formula. Diddy Kong Racing sold about 4.5 million, which is actually pretty good, especially when Mario Kart 64 came out in the same year. Mario Kart came out in February 1997, and Diddy Kong Racing is November 1997. These are North American releases, in case you're wondering. But Mario Kart 64 beat Diddy Kong Racing in sales, selling about 9.87 million. Now, why didn't Diddy Kong sell as much as Mario Kart 64? Well, it came out within the same year. That's one reason. Another reason is that probably most gamers don't see any reason to buy two of the same game, at least in formula, despite Diddy Kong Racing having tons of additions to it. And that is probably, in comparison, Diddy Kong Racing looks more of a kiddie game than Mario Kart 64 in appearance. I mean, having cute, cuddable animals, you probably assume that this is a more kid-friendly version of Mario Kart, which is not really true, at least from my experience. But, despite that, Diddy Kong Racing did win an award for Best Console Racing Game of the Year from the Academies of Interactive Arts and Science, beating Mario Kart 64. Also, many critics consider Diddy Kong Racing to be a better game than Mario Kart 64, so that's actually quite an accomplishment from Diddy Kong Racing, so good job, Rare. There were some canceled sequel games. First was Diddy Kong Racing for the Game Boy Advance. It was canceled due to Rare being bought by Microsoft during its development. It was changed to Banjo Pie and released in 2005. Even if Nintendo kept Rare, they most likely wouldn't publish the game because they find it to be substandard. And looking at the gameplay footage, I wouldn't disagree with them. Rare was also making another racing game for the Nintendo GameCube around the same time called Donkey Kong Racing. It was cancelled for the same reason. Unlike Diddy Kong Pirate, which was reworked into a different game, this game never came out in any form. The game was reworked into Saberman Stampede and was going to be for the Xbox 360, but again it was cancelled and never seen the light of day. Although there was no official sequel that was made, it did get a remake on the Nintendo DS. Rare was still able to make games on Nintendo portable devices since Microsoft is only in the home console business. I never played that version of the game, but it had negative reception despite having extra contents like more tracks and more unlockable characters. That's it for my Diddy Kong Racing review. Tune in next time when I go into Banjo-Kazooie for the Nintendo 64. This is me, Baba Daddy 3, and I catch you guys later. See ya.